welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. And this is a proud moment in the history for me and for Invisible Edge. And we're going to be talking a lot about, first of all, what is intuitive intelligence? Why should you care? If you're in the business space, how does it actually give you an advantage to bring and include your intuitive intelligence and skills throughout the day in decision-making, sales, leadership, innovation, all the different components of your business. So we're going to get into why that's an advantage and why you should care. And then we're also going to spend some of our time today talking to you about Intuition University, which, as far as I know, is the first remote training, the first virtual learning platform that's teaching intuitive skill building in the business space. There might be another one out there somewhere in the world. I just don't know of it. So this is definitely the first, or one of the first, to be offered out there to help your leaders and teams build skills in advancing their intuition from the comfort of your own home. Or if you're listening on audio at the gym or in a car ride in traffic in LA, for example. So there's a lot of, what I'm proud most about that is that we get to scale this work to everyone around the world. It's also global that way too. So it's where training is going, and we felt it's important to also have a state-of-the-art remote program that can meet those needs. So we will spend the second part of this hour going deep into that conversation, and we'll actually give you a little tour and a test drive of Intuition University. And we have the Dean of Intuition University here, Susan, that I'll introduce later in the program, and she'll get to show you some of the magnificence of our long hours behind the scenes of putting that together. Before we go into that, we're going to jump right in. So what I'm going to look at first here is the beginning. And so Invisible Edge is the name of the company that I've started, and several of our colleagues are on the call right now. And it's based off of my book here, Decisive Intuition, and some of the principles around how do you actually tap into your intuitive intelligence? What are the steps that actually help you get more aware of your inner signals and cues and your spidey sense that we all have access to? And then how can you actually leverage that to make better decisions throughout the day? I think the research that I read shows that we make 33,000 decisions in one day. Now, a lot of those are minor. It might be like, oh, should I hit the snooze button or get up now? Or are those the best pair of socks? So it could be those kind of decisions. Should I eat in 5 minutes? Or sometimes they're obviously very critical decisions. Is this the right company for me? Why do I feel like my relationship feels like a dead end for the last couple weeks? And what do I do about that? So there's all kinds of course, critical decisions that we face that shape the course of our life. And so wouldn't you want to listen to your intuition the first time and not the sixth time? That's really what this is about, is giving you tools and to your most important resource that you have available, your inner compass, so that you can really rely on that throughout the day as you're making these key decisions in business or also in your life. And so that's really what this work is founded upon. And so at Invisible Edge, we're taking this work into the corporate space, into entrepreneurial startup spaces, even some small business as well, and helping leaders and teams have the tools where they can really hone in on their own intuitive intelligence and then use that skillfully when it comes to sales and reading out the needs of a customer, when it comes to leadership and making the best decisions possible, when it comes to innovation and tapping into my creativity and thinking of a third possibility that I never thought of before, or my team. There's so many different amazing uses for this. So let's get into the heart of it. So why is this so important right now? Why should you care? So intuitive intelligence, and what I want to say about that is never before in our history, in our human history, have we ever been flooded by more input and more data streams coming our way and more information and more overwhelm than today. And that's only going to continue. And so through all the social media bombardment and news outlets and beepers and bells going off on our different gizmos and the speed and how everything is so incredibly rapid these days of getting information from any corner of the planet. Think of your inbox. Where back in the day, it was just a newspaper you would read in the morning, way back in the day. And now we're reading on average 174 newspapers per day of information. If that's the equivalent of what we're actually taking in, and it's only increasing. So this is why honing in and developing our intuition is so critical, so we can actually discern what's meaningful, what's relevant with all the information that I am absorbing and taking in right now. What should I actually be paying attention to? What's the noise that I can block out that's not as important and relevant to me in my decisions of the day? And what are the data points that I should be cluing in on? And how do I start to track that? And notice my own experience. What's my own bodily experience as I go through my day? Because there's going to be ways that I get information and it's going to affect me. And how do I also learn to be more self-aware and pay attention to that also? So I'm including my inner data and also the outer data so that I can really relate with life and relate with my business in a whole more intimate way. One other thing I want to say about why is this important now is that emotional intelligence was an amazing breakthrough when that concept came out 24 years ago in Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence. And it's completely revolutionized the business space. And it's not the only way that we receive information. It's not the end of our story of how our intelligence develops. And now we need more levels of refinement and nuance. We need to be able to use all the ways that we are receiving information. Just like in this image, we have this woman connected to her heart, but open to all of the matrix code around her and all the data points around her. That's what is required today as a leader. That's what's required today for innovation, is being on the front lines of intuiting what is my environment telling me? What's happening with geopolitical changes that can happen in a millisecond? What's happening with climate change? What's happening with the fluctuations of marketplaces, where if one market crashes in China, it ripples out to the whole world in a matter of hours or if not minutes. And so as our world gets more interconnected in these ways, we have to be able to navigate all of the different ripple effects and be more adaptable. And if we're not tuning into our intuition, by definition, we're not adaptable, because intuition happens in the present moment. It's right now that I'm getting to feel what's happening in the space and what needs to happen next. Otherwise, I'm just stuck in my head analyzing something from the past or trying to imagine a future, but I'm not really here taking in the information first, where I can then access more information and make better decisions. So this is why this is so critical, that we start to allow our intuition to come online and be activated, where in the past it was maybe relegated more to, woo-woo conversations or certain spiritual, esoteric contexts. And what we're here to say is that intuition is actually the most innate, basic intelligence we all have since childhood. Children have it naturally. And it's only later that we develop these mental programmings where we get displaced and disconnected from our native intelligence. So this is a call to get connected back to our native intelligence, to learn how to decode our own intuitive language, and so we can learn how to listen to that important way of receiving information, and then learn how to take action on that so we can live lives and make business decisions that are in alignment with our highest values, our deepest purpose, and our most effective results. So what is intuition? So how I define it here in my book is it's an embodied knowing that comes from listening to what wants to happen next. So it's not just in my head. It's not just a thought. It's different than a thought. It's an embodied knowing. So I'm using my whole bodily experience as a instrument or a tuning fork. So that means I'm willing to pay attention to if I'm getting some feelings or signals in my gut or my heart or my throat or my solar plexus, or maybe some chills down my spine when I meet someone for the first time. It's using my whole body. It's an embodied knowing. So it's including the whole subconscious, not just the conscious mind. that comes from listening to what wants to happen next. So it's a dialogue. It's a conversation. It's like, oh, what wants to happen next in this team meeting? Why does it feel so flat? What needs to happen next? Or if I'm in a sales call or conversation, what wants to happen next year between us? I feel like we're not quite getting at the real pay dirt of why they came here or what the real problem is. So it's asking that question and then waiting for an answer and holding that loosely as you're in the moment. And that's really the power of intuition. Is it's a conversation that we're having between our subconscious and the whole environment around us, whether that's between other people or even the whole space, and just intuiting, oh, what needs to happen next year with our product development or this hard deadline that we set that seems really impossible. Is that actually good for us and healthy for our company? Or is that going to create a lot of bugs and problems in our product because we're pushing it too fast? So intuition opens us up to that bigger frame. It's not just about me, but really what's in the best interest of all stakeholders. And if you haven't read my book, you should. It's really good. But if you have, you probably know that these are the three main premises right here of my book, is that intuition is within you. All of us have it. It came from the original manufacturer. We all came down with this. Once again, it's our innate intelligence from childhood. And if you have children, you know what I'm talking about, where they'll just get a spidey sense about something. If they don't trust a stranger or somebody, or they get a weird feeling about something, pay attention to that. They're getting information. And this is before their whole, frontal cortex is developed. So their intuition is unencumbered. It's pretty open from the get-go. And it's only later that our mind gets in the way. So intuition is within you. We all have it. It's also teachable. We can all learn how to develop and cultivate our intuition. Often what happens by the time we're adults is we've been deconditioned out of trusting and listening to our intuition. Maybe we had a lot of that spidey sensor access when we were younger, and somehow our family or our culture or religion or whatever, however we grew up, may not have had a lot of room for that. Maybe there wasn't permission to trust what I felt in my household, or there was really no cultural context where I could put that made sense. So I just started to ignore and put it on the shelf to collect dust. And I just started to pay attention to only what my parents told me or the teachers at school. And I started to tune out my inner creativity and my inner innovation and my intuition. So it's teachable. And then third one, it's your invisible edge. So and we've seen this, we've tested this out and seen this time and time again now as we're out there in the workplace, is that intuition applied to business by integrating your inner knowledge with data and logic also. We're not saying it's just only one or the other, but it's combining your intuition with the data and logic actually makes better decisions. Research and science shows this now, that when you incorporate data-informed, intuitive decision-making, you make superior decisions. Most high-level executives and C-suite leaders know this. They know that they've earned that reputation with themselves to trust their intuition. A lot of times, newer managers or newer leaders have a harder time going with their gut because a lot's on the line, and it's risky to go with your intuition a lot of times in the beginning when you don't develop that relationship yet and that trust. So a lot of times what I notice is leaders who are not as confident in themselves and their intuition and their instincts more rely on metrics to make all their decisions. You can also err too much on the other side of getting too arrogant or siloed in your decision making if it's only about gut. And you think you have a great intuition, but you stop checking in with other people. And you stop including other people in the conversation, other stakeholders. This is where you can silo too much into your, my gut's always right. And that can lead you down a dangerous path also. So what we're saying is take the best of both. And that's what we've developed our systems and processes around, is taking the best of the data and research that you have at hand and the surveys you've done and all that you know about your customers, And how do you intuit their needs and maybe how to customize certain issues, solutions, how every person might need something a little bit different. And if you're just going by a one size fits all, people are not going to feel very seen or really gotten or met by you as a business person. So to make it really simple, how does intuition give you an invisible edge? And it really does two things. And these are huge in the business space and in your personal life too. Number one, intuition allows you to read out what's happening in your environment in real time more accurately. So when I can trust my antenna of my intuitive instrument, when it becomes more activated and I get more practice with it, I'm able to learn how to trust that and feel for, what's happening in the room. If I'm doing an investment pitch or a sales pitch in front of a whole audience, I can change and pivot in a second if I can feel like it's not going in the right direction. Or if I'm even having a one-to-one conversation, if I'm managing somebody and I'm having a one-on-one conversation, I'm actually able to read out, they say they're bought into our new strategy, but I can feel like they're not. Their body language is telling me they're not at all behind what we're moving toward and the changes we're trying to make, right? And so switched on leaders are more and more giving themselves permission to listen and trust their intuition in all these key areas of a business, actions, decision-making, strategies, activities, etc. So that's number one, is it allows you to read out what's happening in real time. Number two, it allows you to anticipate the future. As Wayne Gretzky's famous hockey quote, he says, "I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where it's going to be." I can anticipate where the trajectory is going. I mean, our most brilliant leaders like Steve Jobs, as far as intuition and innovation, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, Nikolai Tesla, Thomas Edison talks about intuition, Albert Einstein, so many of our thought leaders in science, people who invent things and make things, our business innovators, political innovators, people who are really at the forefront of where things are moving. They're able to anticipate where things are going and what needs to happen next. And that can only come from being tuned in the present moment first. You have to be able to feel and sense what's happening right now so that you can anticipate where things are moving toward, where that puck is going. Imagine how valuable of a skill that is to build for you as a leader or a manager or even as an employee. That if you could actually develop that skill to tune into what's happening in the moment with your team, with your company culture, with your customer, with a business partner, to tune into what's really happening there, whatever they're saying, what's the real conversation that's happening. And then number two, to anticipate, what needs to happen next? And I might not always know the answer, but I'm open to the question. That's where our intuition can find us. So you might be asking, well, how does that actually impact my business in practical ways? I get that that would help me as an individual. How does it actually show up in a business? So I want to shout out to Slade Mackermer, who designed this beautiful wheel here called the Intuitive Impact Wheel. Thank you, Slade. And so this is an example of some of the different ways that we literally bring in intuitive intelligence in practical ways in the business space. So in the center of the wheel, you'll see here is where these are the activators. These are what activates your intuition. If you deepen your listening skills and what you're seeing and how you're seeing, the lens that you see through. Is it just about my preferences and agenda? Or am I actually seeing or asking like what's best for the whole company? Where are we going on the biggest level? So it's not just about me, and my ego. Activating my ability to feel, my willingness to feel what's happening with me and someone else, or me and many people, or just the environment. And also my ability to comprehend and discern and understand. So when I put attention on these things, this is what activates my intuition. So we actually have practices. I like to call them dribble drills, like in basketball, where you're just kind of dribbling and practicing these different listening skills, feeling things through in a conversation and what's underneath a conversation, so that you can actually bring this in real practical ways to your company. So just to run through this very fast here to give you a taste. So how does intuition affect leadership? Well, leaders who are in touch with what's most meaningful and purposeful and the deepest wisdom inside of them are more inspired. You've probably all been around leaders that are very inspired, connected to a deeper purpose and passion, and some that are not. And they're just kind of going day by day, putting out fires. So leaders that are connected to their intuition are more visionary by definition. They're able to intuit the future, or at least make time for that and start to ask those questions. Sometimes it's even just asking the questions. And they're also more adaptive. If you're on the cutting edge of your intuitive intelligence, you're literally able to address an issue right when it's happening on your team versus wait until 5 weeks later. You're able to get to a decision where it doesn't take 27 meetings to get there typically, especially in a corporate environment where no one's empowered to make decisions, pretty much. And so you're more adaptive no matter how big the size of your company is, because you're on the cutting edge of feeling the data that's happening all around you all the time through your subconscious, which works faster than your conscious mind. 500,000 times faster to be exact. How does it relate to customer relations? So once again, if I'm intuiting my needs of my customer, I can make my solutions more personal, which is going to build a longer term client, more retention. I can once again anticipate their needs, be more anticipatory for what, even before they complain or before there might be an issue. I'm already anticipating that with my team. Maybe we're even brainstorming what those possible challenges might be down the road. We're more creative. We're coming up with not just off-the-shelf products and services only, but maybe we learn how we can adapt those over time. And what does version 5 and version 6 and version 7 look like? Performance. When our team is bringing their intuitive intelligence activated in our company, they're more engaged. There's literally more innovation happening because you're thinking outside the box. There's more cooperation because you're working together on a solution, not just my own preference of me, and what's going to get me ahead in the company, but actually, how does this fit in the whole system? And intuition helps us feel for when things are in alignment and when they're not. Culture. A culture is going to be more empathic and alive. You're bringing more of yourself every day to your business. It's more connected. You're literally increasing your emotional intelligence with your intuitive intelligence. You're literally more tuned into everyone around you. Navy SEALs recently spent around $4 million on developing their spidey sense for teams in the field so that they can be on the same page when they're in a hostile environment or facing chaos and uncertainty that war brings, right? By definition. And so imagine they know the need to sync up with their intuitive decision making, and being on that same page is so critical. Same is true in business. If you have toxic members of your team or no way to really facilitate a conversation to get everyone on the same page, and if you're not listening to your spidey sense that Susie's checked out and Raul is completely maybe throwing a wrench in the whole plans and being subordinate, and you have all these other dynamics going on, and if you don't trust your intuition and speak to that at all, it's going to run off the tracks. So you're going to have a disconnected culture, which is too often what happens out there. Lastly, information. And so it's amazing how intuition allows us to be open to more data than less. We're actually open to more data, and we're able to track what's relevant about that data. Once again, with AI and everything that's happening these days, we're going to be more and more flooded with big data. So our ability to hone in on how to tell the narrative and the story that the data is telling us is going to be more of a necessary skill for every leader. What's the story that this data is telling me, so that we can bring meaning to these numbers and actually use that to make better decisions. So a lot of this also comes back to, what's my intuitive language? And this is something that's been very fascinating. So one of the things that I really confirmed in my book and interviewing a lot of business leaders from all over the world of how they use intuition in their business is that we all have unique languages. We all have different ways that our intuition speaks to us. So for some people, they talk about getting an intuition more of like a really like a body sense, a kinesthetic feeling, a gut sense, a solar plexus trigger. Maybe something happens in their heart where it flutters more or opens, or it gets colder when there's a strong no about something. Some people report more, they'll see pictures and images. They'll actually see a flash of something that's about to happen. I was interviewed on the radio by a DJ about this topic, and he actually told me, this is a guy in Florida, he told me that he saw 9/11 before it happened. He saw like a day or two before, he saw these towers fall with the airplane, and he had no sense what these pictures were that he was seeing. And then a couple days later, that happened. And so how that's explained is our subconscious is so much more wise and plugged into the whole ecosystem that we're not even aware of. So this is all about, how do I get conscious about my unconscious and my subconscious so that I can actually start to pay attention to more nuances throughout the day and leverage that for having more engagement and more participation, better decision making. Some people report hearing audio sounds. So they'll literally hear an audio message about something like, oh, don't trust that person, or, ooh, this deadline's not going to work, or this hire is the perfect fit even though they don't have all the qualifications. We still have to hire them. Sometimes you'll hear an audio message. Here's a couple others. So what I'm going to have you think about right now is to decode your own intuitive language. Literally decode it. Like, how does it speak to you? And one way you can think about this is think back to a time when you've had a very strong intuition about someone or something in your life. Could be in the business space. It could also be in your life. So think back to a time when you had a strong intuition and maybe you didn't listen to it. Maybe you did. Either way, how did it speak to you? This is one way you can start to track your intuitive language. Did it come to you in the sense of maybe a dream state? We didn't talk about that yet, but maybe in your dreams, you saw some prophetic moments that happened later that came true. Some business owners I interviewed in the book were able to harness their subconscious through their dream states and actually create things in their business that had never existed before. Some people report a sense of knowing. It's just like this cognizance of just knowing something is true. And it just comes in a flash, or like a bubble in molasses, it arises slowly. Some people, that's not on here, but some people will report seeing synchronicity in their external life. So they'll see maybe they'll keep seeing the word Paris, show up throughout, out of nowhere. It shows up for a few weeks, like Paris, and they get this sense about it. Maybe they've been holding a question for themselves about a vacation or about a business opportunity, and they'll start to see these synchronicities show up where someone talks to them about Paris. They see someone with a random t-shirt in the subway that says Paris on it. So those kind of things. And so sometimes even paying attention to all the signs and synchronicities is another way that our subconscious is trying to talk to us. So these are all different possibilities, but just take a moment right now, and I want you to think about, what's my intuitive language? And how can I start to harness that more? How can I start to invite that conversation more into my life? And if I know that I get feelings, am I actually stopping throughout the day a little bit more and checking in? If I know that dream states are important to me, and that's how I get information, do I have a little recorder where I can have it next to my bed, and then when I'm kind of waking up from one of those kind of dreams, I can talk into it right away as I'm half asleep, and then I can come back later and remember what I dreamed about. So all of these, we can actually make room for them. We have to make room for them if we're going to have a relationship with our intuition. So these are the kind of things we build with leaders and teams. We help you identify your intuitive language and then actually build practices and exercises to strengthen that so that you can incorporate that throughout the day. And I'm just going to give you a couple really useful tools, and then we're going to open up to some Q&A. And then finally, we're going to go into showing you Intuition University. So here are some ideas of how you can actually tap into your intuition at work. Very practical ways. So one of them is slowing down. This is one of the hardest things for me. And when I look around for a lot of people these days, and so intuition requires that we're not just in our normal mindset with, next thing, next thing, next thing. We're actually slowing down and we're checking in and we're actually journaling like, oh, what am I noticing right now? If I have a question about something, maybe it's a hiring decision and I'm really conflicted if we should hire this person or not. What happens when I slow down and check in? Like, oh, if I just for a moment let everything else drop, what am I actually feeling? Is this hire really, what happens in my body? What happens in my inner signals and cues? What's my subconscious telling me? And to actually take some notes. Or if I'm in a team meeting and I'm getting these weird sensations or weird feelings, note that. And then I can start to check in with other people later to see how accurate is my inner signals here. How accurate is my intuition? Doing a tech detox is huge. So being willing to put down your phone for 5 minutes and to go for a walk outside and change your state, which is the fourth one down here, is a state change. Get out of your normal routine so that you can be more receptive and you can be more fresh. That's how our intuition finds us, is if our mind is a little more relaxed, a little more fresh. And sometimes we need to change our landscape and go off site. Sometimes it's literally just eliminating our outer and inner distractions. That's where the tech detox for even 5 or 10 minutes a day, where you can go into that innovative zone. That's really key. And then lastly, mindfulness reminder. So sometimes on my phone, I'll set up a little alarm or a bell that chimes. And what that does is that helps me remember whatever task I'm into. It's a ding. It's like, oh yeah, checking in with myself for just a second, for just a moment, checking in with my intuition about something that I'm facing. Those little reminders can pop us out of our day-to-day mindset and really help us open up to that bigger space. And lastly, here's some tools for hacking your subconscious. Oops. Here we go. Yeah, and actually Ben just said, yes, a walk is best. And I agree with Ben. Ben is a leader of a company that I work with. And this is one of the things I really value from Ben's leadership is he intuited that sometimes having difficult conversations in a company, you need to get them outside and go outside and open it up to a different space. And then your intuition can work in a whole different way. And this is really critical. Steve Jobs did the same thing where he would go outside barefoot, is what Steve would do. I think Ben wears shoes. But anyway, he would get outside, walk around barefoot, and that would help him open up to that deeper space of innovation and new thoughts, because he'd have to slow down and get away from the computer screen, basically. Here's some tools to hack into the subconscious. So sometimes a mindfulness exercise, meditation, there's all kinds of apps now that also will help you relax your conscious mind and your linear thinking so that your subconscious can get to work. For me, even breathing techniques, slowing down my breath is very helpful to tune into my body. And even going to a sauna or a steam room just relaxes my nervous system so that I'm open to new doors and portals of information because my normal mindset is relaxed. It's amazing what happens if you give that a practice. And it's not just about relaxation. Sometimes recreation is also important. So movement. So many people talk about getting into a flow state where they're feeling their best and operating at their best and performing their best when they go for a run. They go for a swim. They do some kind of repetitive motion that gets their linear thinking offline again so that they can start to access these new thoughts. When I go on runs, sometimes I get great ideas that I never had before. Also, improv classes, they get you into a spontaneous sense of play, creativity, and that really is the wellspring of innovation and intuition. Music and art can also be amazing channels for this as well. We already talked a little bit about state changes. And I guess if you're looking for a good meditation app, Insight Timer is a good one. There's a lot of them out there. So you can just check on, do some research, but Insight Timer is one of them that Susan recommends on our team. And so state changes, getting new environments, getting outdoors. For me, nature is one of the best ways to clear my mind. I live in San Diego now, and so I've taken up surfing again after a while. And even though my ribs are sore, the beauty is when you're in the water for an hour and a half, everything washes over, and it literally clears your mindset. And you're in the ocean. Talk about a metaphor for the unconscious, right? And so you're opening up to this whole vast perspective. So if you have a vista near you, if you have a park near you, if you have a forest near you, or even getting outside and walking around the block can change your state and open you up to new perspectives. And lastly, sometimes there's ways of disrupting the conscious mind that we actually use also, where you can have mind puzzles. You can literally distract your mind on something while your subconscious gets to work on the deeper issue you're facing. Sometimes they'll do this in research where they'll have you count backwards from 236 backwards by sevens. And your mind is actually doing that as your subconscious is then working on a deeper problem. And then it's amazing how that will then connect the dots faster because your mind is not getting in the way. That's the key here. That's really the theme. So I'm going to pause here and we're going to see, are there any questions that you may have of anything we've talked about around why is intuition important? How could it be important for your business? What's your intuitive language, or how do you work with that in your daily life? How do you hack into your subconscious? Just want to open it up if there are any questions out there, and then we're going to tune into Intuition University for the last portion of our time together. So if you have a question, feel free to chat it in. We also have a Q&A feature here, but we'd love to hear any questions you might have.
Rick, can I chime in with a
please.
Quick story as we're waiting?
Do you want to get on video too?
Sure, let me turn my camera on.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, Susan Steele. She is our Dean of Intuition University and a member of our team at Invisible Edge. And so take it away, Susan.
So one of the exercises that Rick talks about in the book and that we use at Intuition University is the coin toss exercise. And it's a really great way to, I think, sort of bypass your conscious mind and get into the subconscious and get your conscious mind out of the way. And it's a really easy exercise. All you need is a coin. And I actually used it just a couple of weeks ago as I was thinking about where I wanted to go with my business. And I just asked myself the question, and then instead of focusing on whether it was heads or tails, I assigned one answer to head and one answer to tails. I just let myself feel what I felt when I saw heads or tails come up. So it wasn't so much that, oh, I'm going to do whatever the coin tells me. It's really listening for that subconscious feeling of where I really was and where I wanted to go. It's really simple. It takes about 5 minutes, but it can be very, very powerful.
And Teresa says here, that's a cool idea. Teresa, I agree. This is one of the fastest ways you can start to tune into your inner signals and cues of your body's wisdom. Our bodies are much wiser than we give them credit for. And so the coin toss is such an easy, quick way. And once again, you're not tracking which one gets to 5 first. It's how you feel as heads or tails comes up, as Susan says. You start to notice, oh, I want to move toward one of those decisions or move away from one of those decisions, or I feel neutral and flat. And so whatever it might be, it's good to know. So it's a very quick diagnostic way you can start to tune into your inner signals and cues. Thank you for that. Any last question before we jump into Intuition University? Okay. Let's go right in, and I'm very proud of this moment. This is actually the first time we've turned on Intuition University for public use. And as far as I know, like I said earlier, this is the first virtual learning platform for building your intuitive skills and your intuitive intelligence in the workplace. So that's really the context here is, how do I build my spidey sense at work so I can make better decisions and anticipate what's happening faster, being able to see pattern recognition much quicker than before, use this in sales so I can read out the needs of my customer well in advance than I could before. These are some of the amazing innovations that we're seeing with people that are that we're working with live. And so now you can do this in the comfort of your home, in the comfort of your car, if you're driving around and wanting to hear the audio. Don't do the video if you're driving. But we do have video, audio, text downloads as well. So there's so many ways, depending on your learning style, that you can get this information. And so I want to give you a little taste here, and then Susan's going to give you an actual tour. I'm going to have her share her screen in a moment here. And so just to give you a sense of how this is designed. So Intuition University, it starts with the foundational series, which is the 100 series is the beginning. And that's basically all about, these courses here are really geared toward, well, what is intuition? What isn't intuition? How is it different than instinct and emotion? And how is it different than insight? How do I really isolate this one skill so I can develop it? And what's the neurobiology and the science behind intuition? So we're going to get into that in this whole series so that you really get a sense of a shared language that we can have together. So we can all develop this in coordinates with where we're going. So the first series is really the foundation of what is intuition, how we're talking about it. And the second series is, okay, now we get intuition, let's talk about yours. This is where it gets personal. So this is where we help you develop your intuitive language and give you the 6 steps to actually access your inner compass and your spidey sense. So the whole 200 series is all about more of a personal journey on you locating your own intuitive language. And then the 300 level is all about, now that you got a relationship with your intuition on a whole nother level than ever before, how do you apply it in business relevant ways? How does this actually get applied in hiring and firing decisions, in strategic decisions or financial budgeting decisions, and recognizing patterns around numbers? How does this work with sales and marketing? And so there's so many applications in managing other people and intuiting the needs of my team. There's so many important applications for your intuition in business. That's what the 300 level is all about. And we actually make these a prerequisite, these first 300 levels, because we want everyone to have a common language. We want you to have those dribble drills and that basic skill and intelligence, so that then you can get into what we call the 400 series here. And these are the advanced tracks. And these are separate tracks that you can get on their own. And these are about intuitive leadership. So how do you build your intuitive leadership with an emphasis in decision making? There's intuitive sales. So you might just be a VP of sales or director of sales, and you might have 2 people on your team or 5,000 people on your team, and you want them to develop their intuitive intelligence around sales. Well, they can just take that sales track once they've done the prerequisites. And then finally, there's an innovation track. So if you're an R&D, or you're developing a product, or you just want to open up your team's creativity, maybe you're a web design and digital marketing company, or a creative graphic design company, and you want to spur on your team's creativity, well, the innovation track would be perfect for that. So that's where we get a little more fine-tuned depending on your needs. So this sounds like a good place for me to pause. And Susan, I'm going to cue it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right.
And if you want to show them, what does Intuition University actually look like?
I will show them.
Okay.
So hopefully everyone can see my screen. So really, this is the student dashboard. This is going to be the place where you see all of the courses that you have purchased, or your department leader has purchased for you. And as Rick said, we want each of the courses and the bundles build on each other. So it's important to take the courses in order. So within the 200 series, as you see them laid out here on your screen, this is how you're going to take them. I'm going to go into one of the courses just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So over here on the left-hand side is where you have the different modules within this particular course. Within each module itself, there's usually 1 or 2 lessons, and a lesson consists of a brief introduction to what you're going to be learning, a video from Rick or one of our other team members talking about the issue at hand. We'll have some questions at the end. So after you watched the video, a couple of questions for you to think about to help you sort of deepen your learning. If you want, you can download the video transcript of the video. You can also listen to an audio-only version. These are designed to be very quick videos. You can see this one's only 5 minutes. It really broken down into sort of micro learning chunks so that you can learn easily on the go. When you have 10 or 15 minutes here and there, you can get this into your day. Another thing that I really like about Intuition University is the exercises. As much as possible, we've included exercises with exercise sheets that you can download so that you can really put what you're learning into practice. I think that's the thing about Intuition University that's the most exciting for me, is that we all read books like this, books like Rick's book, Decisive Intuition, and there's so much great information in them, and we like them and we read them and then we put them back on the shelf. And what I like about Intuition University is it takes all of the contents of the book and more and really puts it into a practical format so that you can really get something out of it. You can change your habits, you can increase your skill. We have discussion forums, so once these courses are open, you'll have opportunities to talk with fellow students and sort of share the learning experience. We've also built in knowledge checks. So the end of each of these courses for the 100, 200, and 300 series, there is a short knowledge check at the end. These are going to be really helpful for businesses and corporations. This is going to be really good for trainers and HR departments. You can have a measure of how your employees are moving through the courses. You can measure some of the comprehension. So it kind of gives you some metrics that you can take a look at as your teams go through this information. So that's a very brief preview of Intuition University. It will be up and available as soon as we are done with today's webinar. So Rick, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, excellent. And then I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, here we go. Yes, bingo. Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention too is we've also developed an intuitive assessment scale. So you can actually assess how am I progressing in my intuitive intelligence over time. And so we have you take the intuitive assessment scale as a leader in the beginning, but then also you have an opportunity to keep checking in with that scale during your progress around Intuition University, so that when you graduate, you can see how far you've come in developing your intuitive skills. So we're really bringing a lot of metrics and a lot of ways of tracking progress into this space. And that's going to be very important, once again, for HR leaders, for trainers, for anyone who's bringing their teams into this, and you want to make sure that there's progress happening. We're actually building, and we've built and are continuing to build even more metrics to show the impact that way, but then also impacts in your company. Like when you think about sales, for example, that's a very easy one to track how your sales are increasing by building your intuitive skills with your sales force. And so we have a lot of measures and ways that we're bringing that to teams so they can actually see, oh, wow, after working with you guys for 3-4 months, I'm actually seeing this amount of conversion rate shift and change and progress. So imagine how valuable that is when you start to see the real improvements in real time. So this is really towards the end of our talk today. And I wanted to say, as Susan just mentioned, right now, you can go to intuition-university.com and access your own view of Intuition University. Check it out. Take yourself on a tour. We have several intro courses that are free where you can really get some great information and some welcome video information and context about Intuition University, and gives you a taste of some of the quality of videos and audio, etc. And so you can do that right now. And we're offering a special coupon code. For those of you that are listening to this message right now, you have 48 hours to take advantage of a 10% discount. So if you use this coupon code Intuition10, when it asks you for the coupon code when you check out, you're going to get a 10% discount. as a thank you for being an early adopter of this work. And most of all, I'm just want to say how thrilled I am that we can offer this across borders. We can offer this now anywhere in the world. Anyone at any hour can start to deepen their relationship with their intuitive intelligence. And once again, this not only has ramifications in your business, which it undoubtedly will, it also will change your relationship with yourself in your life and the quality of the questions you ask and this, how you start to align your choices with your actions and use your intuition to stay on track and to be smart about what's not healthy or good for you and what's toxic and what you need to make changes about in your life. And so this is how my intuition serves me and the people that are on my team as we all continue to grow our own relationship to our intuition, and how vital this whole relationship really is in a world that hasn't really put their attention on it like they need to. And so once again, with today's changing times and the amount of input and data we all receive, we need to double down on our human intuition more than ever so that we can connect not just through the internet, but with each other in real time. So thank you so much for tuning in and checking this out. I really encourage you to give it a go and check it out and just, feel through it intuitively and see what you notice and how your experience is, and give it a go, give it a try, and see what happens as you start to develop your own intuitive skills over time. And we also have a forum and a way to share information with everyone on the Intuition University platform, so we can keep learning from each other on best practices and ways that this is really being applied out there in the real business space. So, Susan, any last words before we wrap up today?
You got to check it out. I have to say I was a skeptic when I first started working with Rick last year, and he knew that when we started working together, but working with this information and his research over the last year has really, really made me change how I look at my intuition and how I use it. So just go into it with an open mind and see what you find out.
And Susan's an Enneagram 5, so she does her research, which is what that means. People who don't know about the Enneagram, she does her research very thoroughly. So she's a good tester of this in that way. So, and I appreciate that, Susan. You're a great example of, it doesn't matter what you believe, it's about your experience. That's what this is about. So this is not a belief thing. It's intuition, I like to say, is non-denominational. Mm-hmm. Everyone can access it. It's a human thing. So if you identify as human, and even if you're not, you're welcome too. So give this a go, and I'd love to hear your experience. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you all, and don't hesitate. You can always reach out to info@invisible-edgellc.com for any questions at any time. That's info@invisible-edgellc.com. And all the best.